Senator Bakk.
Mr. President, members, there's something glaringly missing from this tax bill, and it is the fact that there is no money in this bill to provide aid to cities or counties, local government aid or county program aid in tax speak. And what this amendment does is it doesn't quite get us back to where we were in 2002 before the plenty reductions happened, but it gets us really close. We're limited by the revenue that's available in the underlying amendment, so it actually appropriates about $27.8 million for local government aid for our cities under the formula, and the same amount to counties in the form of county program aid. And that's ongoing. So in addition, members, there are a number of provisions where we've got cities that have got some unique challenges where we're creating a one-year exception or an addition to the local government aid formula. There are 7 members, I believe, that have provisions in my amendment on page 2. One of them, Senator Gazelka, and one is me, and there are 5 others. And in the case of Senator Gazelka's community of Flensburg, what ended up happening, members, is the city, for whatever reason, didn't get some reports filed with the with the state auditor, and as a result, they didn't receive their local government aid for 1 year. So a number of times when things like that have happened, the tax committee, once the report was submitted, went back and paid the city the local government aid that they were due. And in this case, it's $38,400, and they only receive it one time in 2020. There's a similar provision for the city of East Grand Forks. Senator Johnson, I was in the House when East Grand Forks suffered a horrific flood. And members, what ended up happening under the local government aid formula to the city of East Grand Forks at that time was because a major factor in the local government aid formula is how much pre-1940 housing you have. And that is a big factor in how much aid you receive from the state. The assumption is old housing stock means old streets, old infrastructure. So it's one of the main factors that determine eligibility for local government aid. And because the city was in a situation of having to replace a bunch of pre-1940 housing, the local government aid formula is not working for that community like it should. So there's a provision in here that does tweak the local government aid formula to give them an additional $300,000 per year from 2021 through 2024. And I'm hoping that during that period of time we can actually make some permanent adjustments to the formula to help them. So members, there's 9 of those type of provisions in here. There also is something that in the tax committee we call the hold harmless provision. The formula moves around depending on what happens to a community's tax capacity and their need. And so what the amendment does is it assures that for 1 year and 1 year only, no city can receive less aid than they received the year before. That's something that we've done a number of times. And then going forward, it also changes how much a city can lose. Under current law, a city can lose depending on what's happening to them in the formula. And if we don't put new money in the formula, the money kind of moves around. Under current law, what can happen is a city can lose a cap of up to $10 per capita in their local government aid, and they can't lose more than that in any 1 year. This actually amendment will change that to $5 per capita, so it will cities that are falling off the formula will continue to fall off the formula, but it'll happen more gradually for them, so the property tax impacts will be mitigated some by that change. So there is a provision in here for Senator Tomassoni for Virginia that's been around here for a long time, and I've been a little disappointed that we haven't been able to accomplish that because of the United Taconite having to encroach on US Highway 53 between the cities of Virginia and Eveleth. MnDOT had to move the highway and build a new bridge. And the impact of that was the city of Virginia was in a situation of having to move some perfectly good utilities. And it was no fault of their own, and it cost them about $5.4 million to do that. MnDOT, for whatever reason, wouldn't reimburse the city or didn't have the authority to reimburse the city for having to move the utilities because the highway and the bridge were being relocated. So there is a one-time $5.4 million appropriation to the city of Virginia in here. We thought the best way to handle that was through the local government aid formula to the city. So, members, I appreciate your support. It's something that's really lacking in the bill. The fact that I've just always felt that, you know, most cities, the only option they have is through the property tax. And, you know, it costs about the same to provide services. You know, I often argue, and I see Senator Anderson Paul is looking at me. Senator Anderson, a fire truck in Minnetonka costs about the same as a fire truck in the little town of Scanlon. And that's not in my district, but they happen to be in the bill, in the amendment. And some communities just have a lot more tax capacity to be able to afford just the basic services that community needs. And that's what the local government aid formula is intended to do, is for the state to partner with communities that don't have the property tax wealth to be able to provide for fire and police and just the kind of things that we expect our local governments to provide. We've been doing this since 1971 session, local government aid. We have not had the commitment in the last almost decade and a half, I think, that the state should have, because when we don't do it, it all falls on the property taxes. And that's a real burden, especially when you get into rural Minnesota and older communities with a lot of older senior citizens. The burden of property taxes becomes quite significant. So, members, I would appreciate your support in putting some local government aid and county program aid. And the argument for county program aid is, you remember, the legislature created counties. We created them, 87 of them, because the legislature at that time felt that really the best way to deliver a lot of services that the state wants delivered is to do it at a local level, do it at the county level. So we created them so that we could have county courthouses, county jails, and you can kind of go down the list. Social services, where the counties actually do all the work for us. And there's long been a feeling that those mandates that we put on counties, the state should help carry out those mandates. And so we've created a county program aid for the same reason as local government aid, to try help counties pay for many of the costs of the things that the state imposes on them. So there's the same amount of money of county program aid in the bill as there is for aid to cities. And members, I'd appreciate your support.